So welcome to another fantastic Faena Rose event. We are so excited for tonight because we're bringing back the professor himself, the man, the myth, the legend, the inspiration to so many of us. And my wife will be very happy about tonight because she's the fiscally responsible one in the family.
All right.
I like to spend it. She likes to, build the wealth. The 2 pennies into 4 pennies. And so she said to me, I can't wait for you to hear this conversation. So anyways, that's a long introduction. We're here with Scott Prof. G. Galloway, the man, the myth, the legend. Like I said, Scott, congratulations.
Thank you.
On your new book.
Thanks very much.
Another New York Times bestseller after the first week alone. Give us a little taste, a little preview of what you're going to talk about tonight.
Sure.
But don't give away too much.
Thanks for having me. So there's a famous study that shows that if you hang out with 4 other friends, the 5 of you become kind of the same person. Same politics, same body mass index, same sports team, same schools, but one of those people will end up wealthy. So what are the behaviors of individuals who make the same amount of money as everyone else, but when they're our age, end up economically secure? So I'm going to try and break down the research around how do you build wealth. What are the behaviors? What are the strategies? How are you the person that shocks everyone when they find out how wealthy you are when you're our age?
I love it. You heard it. As we like to say, strap in, get ready for another fantastic Faena Rose event. Thanks,
Great.
Scott.
Thanks, brother. Thanks for having me.
So I want to start by saying a big thank you to Scott. I've known Scott. I've had the pleasure of knowing Scott for over 20 years. I said this last year. I don't know if anyone remembered it, but Scott, when he had Profit Brand Strategy, he started a travel site called Room 12. I was at Wallpaper Magazine at the time, and the guy who was running Room 12 said, we're interested in talking to you about a possible position. And I was like, well, I'm really not looking to leave Wallpaper. I'm happy as can be, but you got to be smart and you got to entertain all offers, right? And so I went in and I kind of met with the guy, and he was like, oh man, you're great. I want you to meet Scott. And I go into this boardroom and there's Scott, and he kind of interrupted the board meeting. And I got to tell you, he was intimidating. I was in my 20s. This was probably 1999 or 2000. I was maybe in 30s, and he was intimidating. Maybe I was 19. I don't know. I'm not sure. Age. Anyways, and then since then we belong to another members club, Carbon, which a couple of you were members of, and we've kept in touch since. And when I was starting Rose, and I remember telling Scott what I was doing, Scott has always been incredibly supportive. First thing he said was, I want to join. Just tell me. I want to support you. I want to join. I said, Scott, you don't live in Miami. I was like, I'm not taking your money. You're not here. And I was like, he's like, no, I want to support you. And I said, well, you can support me by coming and speaking, when you're ready. And since then, every time I've asked him to come and speak, there's no hesitation. He's always, I'm there for you. No. So Scott, I want to say thank you very much for being so supportive. So, a gentleman who I think in this room truly needs no introduction. I think we all know Scott, but I'll go through this short list. He is the professor of marketing at NYU Stern School of Business. He's a public speaker. He's a New York Times bestselling author, which his book is a New York Times bestseller in 1 week, so congratulations. He's a podcast host, The Prof G Show, as well as Pivot, and he's also a serial entrepreneur and full of a lot of wisdom and one hell of a sensitive, substantial, meaningful, great guy. So please put your hands together for the one and only Scott Prof G.
Thanks, John. Thanks so much for being here. You always worry. So I've hit a tip. I have just the right amount of fame. And that is, people are just lovely to me on a regular basis. People come up and say hi, and they just couldn't be nicer. But I also feel like I can be anonymous when I want, and I wonder when it's all going to come crashing down. Because I have huge imposter syndrome. I worry at some point I'm going to say something really stupid, and it's just, it'll be over. Or people are going to realize, like, I'm not as good a person as I portray. And so I think, when is it going to happen? Like, it's definitely coming. And tonight, I walked over to the forum, and it was me and another guy, and there was no one there, and I'm like, maybe this is it. It's tonight. And I got a call from Pablo. He's like, you're at the wrong place. I'm like, oh, okay. Live on for another day. It's great to be here. I love being in Miami. I have a home in Delray. I used to have a place, the Continuum. Absolutely, I love Miami. So I'm going to talk a little bit about this book and some of the thinking behind it. And then I want to save a bunch of time for Q&A. I feel naked up here. I'm used to being supported by about 120 slides. So I can just sort of press play and see the slides and kind of go through something pretty easily. And I'm trying on this book tour to do something a little bit more organic and just sort of fly on instruments and then open it up for Q&A. And I want to give the same preamble I give my class at NYU, and that is, I want this to be a safe space. And that is, if I or someone else says something somewhat inelegant that upsets people, we're going to forgive each other. And I think that one of the nice things about getting together, and I think one of the wonderful things about, I've always said at NYU, my job is to turn you into a warrior, not a wokester. And to do that, we need to push each other's buttons, we need to offend each other, such that we can have a constructive debate and shape better solutions. But we're gonna forgive each other. And in exchange for that, I'm going to be totally unfiltered. And I will tell you exactly what I'm thinking on any question you ask on any subject. But we're gonna learn from it. We don't have to agree with each other. We can push back, but we're gonna forgive each other. Okay. So, all right, just wait. Okay, so the book is called The Algebra of Wealth. And the inspiration for the book was, there's this famous study where they found that if you have 4 close friends, you become basically the average of those 4 friends. So as parents, we like to think that we can kind of engineer this sheep. You're really more like a shepherd. You get to figure out where it grazes, what it eats. You can put it in a certain direction, but for the most part, the sheep kind of comes to you. And what it ends up is that the sheep looks, smells, and feels like the 4 or 5 sheep it's hanging out with. Your kids' friends have much more impact on them than you do at this point, once your kid hits 13 or 14, which we don't like to believe, but it's true. So you and your closest friends become the same body mass index. You have the same politics, you root for the same teams, you live in the same neighborhoods, and you usually make the same amount of money within a certain variance. Where the real kind of variability sets in is that one of those people of those 5 will, when they're my age, be economically secure, and the other 4 won't be. So I tried to dive into research around, okay, there's some basics around wealth and making money, but what is it about that person who ends up economically secure despite not making a lot more money? What is the algebra of wealth, right? So it's not just, well, be a baller and make a shit ton of money. Well, all right, that's not that actionable. I get it, most people understand that. But there are going to be 3 million people in government retiring over the next 5 years who've never made more than $100,000, who will retire with $2 or $3+ million in wealth because they have practiced the algebra of wealth. And then there are other people who make a ton of money their whole life and end up broke, right? So what is the algebra of trying to create wealth? The other inspiration was, the book is, as I always do, I have a lot of personal anecdotes. One, I think it helps people remember stuff. 2, I'm a narcissist. I just can't resist talking about me. And also, I have a lot of life experience with respect to money. I was raised by a single immigrant mother who lived and died as secretary, and we didn't have a lot of money. And it was, quite frankly, it was humiliating. I don't think people who are born with a certain amount of money really know what it's like. I don't think they can ever really empathize. I always say it was like we had this ghost following us around, whispering in our ear that we weren't worthy, right?
we were just sort of like we'd failed, that we weren't genuinely like deserving of things. I remember applying to college. I applied to UCLA, I didn't get in. And people would say, well, apply out of state. And it's like, when you don't have money, I didn't even know how to like buy a plane ticket to get on, to go somewhere. You don't have that confidence when you don't have money. You didn't, like applying to another school, we had no connections. I couldn't just get on a plane. I didn't have a credit card, right? I was one of those kids they thought was smart, so they skipped a grade for me, so I was 16 applying to college, which by the way is about the stupidest fucking thing you can do to your children. There's a lot of research right now, especially among boys, showing you should hold them back. Anyway, but I didn't have money. And, you know, I'm not proud of this, but the majority of my life, my professional career, I haven't wanted to change the world for the better. I wasn't especially concerned with being a good person. I wanted to make money. I wanted economic security. It was hugely important to me. And I've spent the majority of my adult life professionally not trying to find my passion, not trying to do things that would change the world for the better, but just to develop economic security. And I think it's really important. And I don't think we have an honest conversation about it. I think America is becomes more like America every day, or more like itself every day, and that is, it's a loving, generous place if you have money. It's a rapacious, violent place if you don't. And people say, and by the way, this book is not about what should be, it's just about what is. I'm not saying this is a good thing. You know, there's this myth we tell ourselves, you've heard it, money can't buy you happiness. Every piece of academic research on the topic says that's bullshit. Money can absolutely buy you happiness. Middle-income people, Daniel Kahneman, who's sort of my role model, a behavioral economist, died about a month ago. He did a ton of research around satisfaction and happiness and its correlation with money. And the results across almost every study are the same. Middle-income people are happier than lower-income people. And upper-income people are happier than middle-income people. That's the bad news. The good news is that it starts to top out. You start to get diminishing returns. Once you get kind of wealthy, becoming super wealthy really doesn't give you, it gives you a wee bit of economic surplus, a reward surplus, but not a lot. There's diminishing returns. There's also a myth that billionaires are less happy than millionaires. They're not. They're not less happy. They're not a lot happier. They're not a lot happier, but they're not any less happy. And also, I get the sense, don't you get the sense Jeff Bezos is super fucking happy right now? Like, I am so here for that guy's midlife crisis. I think it's fantastic. I would like to roll with that guy. We'd both buy canary yellow T-top Corvettes and crash them into a hair plugs clinic. I mean, this is like a midlife crisis gone apeshit, isn't it? I think it's really fun to watch. I'm here for you, Jeff. Where was I? Oh, I was over here. Okay. So I think economic security is really important. And my next book is called The Algebra of Masculinity. I think masculinity is a wonderful thing. I think it's stupid to call it toxic. I think femininity is a wonderful thing, and I don't think there's any reason why we should be shaming it. I coach a lot of young men, and I tell them, I think every young man should take economic responsibility for their household. And people say, well, what about the women? I'm like, well, part of taking economic responsibility is occasionally acknowledging that your partner is better at that whole money thing. So you're going to be very supportive of that person. But you are going to take responsibility. A good place to start, I think, for a man is to start by taking economic responsibility for the household. I don't think there's anything wrong with it. And by the way, most women, regardless of what they will say in opinion columns in The Atlantic, feel that way deep down. 75% of women... It's funny that get applause. 75% of women cite economic viability as a key criteria of mate. It's only 25% for men. In sum, men mate socioeconomically horizontally and down, women horizontally and up. And the really upsetting thing right now is that the pool of men that are horizontal and up socioeconomically is shrinking every day, right? We all know a bunch of great women who can't find a dude, or we say, I know all these really wonderful, high character, intelligent, attractive women, and they can't find a man. The reality is they can find a man, they just can't find a man they want to date. And we have just this incredible phenomenon, I'll come back to this, about failing young men. I think about this a lot. It's kind of my, if you will, it's my passion project, because I relate to these young men who are failing. But money is super important in a capitalist society. And I think everyone should have a plan or at least understand the basics of financial literacy for how you build wealth. And what I tried to go through was, okay, I hope you have a best-selling book. I hope your company goes public, or you sell a business for a ton of money, or you find out you had a rich uncle, whatever it is, or you go double platinum. I don't know, whatever it is that all of a sudden you buy Dogecoin and it goes to $1 billion a share. But let's assume that doesn't happen. All right? There is a way to get economic security without any of those things happening. I was even thinking of calling the book Plan B, and then I'm like, oh, it sounds like I'm talking about something else. And so, anyways, what are the behaviors and strategies of people who end up economically secure, even if they don't hit it big? And I'll go through the algebra. I like to distill things down to an equation because I think it's much easier to hold on to. And then I'll go through each of these and talk about them, interject some kind of life experiences, and then open up for questions. So the first is, the equation itself is focus times the product of time, diversification, and Stoicism. And I'll start with, okay, focus. Focus is really about what I call finding your talent, not following your passion. And I say this all the time, but anyone who tells you to follow your passion, we have two types of speakers at NYU during lunch. We have really interesting, substantive people, and we have billionaires. We've decided that if you have 3 commas around your net worth, you should come talk about life at college. That there's some sort of wisdom that happens to you when you go over $1 billion in wealth. And we introduce them as billionaires, as if they've been knighted, right? Or in my industry, you get a PhD, you defend your thesis, they call you doctor. Billionaire has that new status in the US where we assume that there's a certain level of prestige and insight and wisdom. And they always give the worst advice. And I think this is the worst advice you can give someone. They tell you to follow your passion. And what I've always said, and I believe this, is that anyone who tells you to follow your passion is already rich. And that person made their billions in selling plumbing supplies, right? This is your job as a person in your 20s. And I met someone earlier today in her 20s who just started at Silicon Valley Bank. Find your talent. Try and workshop what you're good at. In an industry, and this is the hard part, that has a 90+% employment rate. That's the key. I have a great field of vision. I'm 6'2", I used to be 6'3". I have actually a pretty strong arm. My passion, I should be the starting quarterback for the New York Jets. I was ready. I was a decent high school athlete, even recruited. They thought, put on a little weight, you have a shot. I have a shot. That was my passion. I got to UCLA and I realized I'm in the 99th percentile of athletes and you need to be in the 99.99. True story, I tried out for quarterback at UCLA. The person who came in number 2 was this guy I came in 8th behind a 5'9" Korean guy. So I didn't come in 9. 9 of us tried out. I came in 8th. The guy who came in number 2 was a guy named Troy Aikman. He came in number 2. And the guy who came in number 1 was a guy named Steve Bono, who went on to play for the Kansas City Chiefs. Anyway, Troy went on to win 3 Super Bowls. Anyways, excuse me, that was a blessing, realizing very early, okay, no athlete. All right, I want to be a pediatrician. I thought, I like kids. I like the idea of being called doctor. I think my mom would be impressed with that. All right, doctor. To chemistry. No, you should not be a doctor. Right? Boom, I'm out of that. Oh, wait, investment banking. My mom and strange women will be impressed by that. Right? So I went into investment banking. And I worked in the fixed income department of Morgan Stanley. I lied about my grades. I went to work for Morgan Stanley because I heard they didn't drug test. I can interview well, as you can imagine. Let's be honest, I have an amazing rap. And I got offers, and someone told me Morgan Stanley is the only investment bank that doesn't drug test. And I'm like, boom, Morgan, here I come. And of course, first day there, they say, go pee in this. I could have swore. I kept waiting for them to come out and say, we found some urine in your ganja. But anyways, worked at Morgan Stanley for 2 years. I hated it. They hated me. That's a blessing. I wasn't cut out to be an investment banker. I just wasn't very good at it. And slowly but surely, I found this kind of career in looking at data and then trying to wrap it into a story. And basically what I've done my whole life is I'm a storyteller. And I knew that my competence, and I say this crassly, but it's true, was establishing these proxy father-son relationships with CEOs of Fortune 500 companies. And I have I have counseled or advised personally, I think 34 of the Fortune 100 company CEOs. That was my job. It was basic. I'm a nice guy. You're going to feel this kind of relationship with me that feels more like a father-son relationship. I'm going to be very committed to you, and I'm going to make you exceptionally successful because on certain topics, I'm smarter and more creative than you. And I made a really good living doing that. And I did it through analytics and data. I would ask for certain data sets. I'd put together a team, and I'd just wallow and marinate in the data, and I'd come up with a story and some insights. And every year, the biggest companies in the world, or most of them would say, here, I would say, what are your 2 or 3 most difficult questions? And give them to me, and I'm going to go away, and I'm going to spend a lot of time in the data, and I'm going to come back, and I'm going to tell you what I think the answers to those questions are. It sounds kind of cool, but when you really think about what we were doing, I was doing a lot of research, a lot of writing, a lot of analytics, a lot of spreadsheets. It wasn't very romantic, but I was good at it. And I knew I'd found sort of my competence. I knew I'd found something that I was talented at. And once you find something that you think you could be a master at, that you could be a ninja, right? You want to find something, could I be in the top 10% here? Then you also want to recognize that the only thing that's guaranteed is a series of injustices. It won't be easy. It's going to be really hard. You're going to have people less smart than you hired above you. You're going to have clients fire you for no real reason. You're going to have people you hire not treat you very well. Clients treat you like shit. You're going to have a series of injustices that you've got to break through and have some perseverance. And once you acknowledge that and you have the maturity to break through those things, or the perseverance or the grit, if you find something you're good at and you can develop the mastery, the ninja-like mastery, that mastery and the accoutrements of that mastery, economic security, relevance, camaraderie, the respect of people, will make you passionate about whatever that thing is. So no child grows up thinking, I want to be a tax accountant. That's my dream. What do you want to do? I want to be an astronaut. What do you want to do? I want to be a doctor. What do you want? I want to be a tax accountant. No one says that, a tax lawyer. But the top 10% of tax lawyers fly private and have a much larger selection set of mates than they deserve. And those things will make you passionate about tax law. You'll be like, oh my God, I love tax law. And I love being great at this because being one of the best in the world at this thing makes me just a baller. And I get to show up at my high school reunion and say, fuck you very quietly to everybody. This is where true passion lies. And I think young people mistake hobbies for their passion. Be a DJ on the weekends. You want to be a model, fine, but just ring fence it. And if you're not making a lot of money, get out quickly and realize you never want to be in a profession that you get worse at as you get older. Sports, modeling. No, you want to be in a profession that you get better at as you get older. In addition, try and find an industry that has a 90+% employment rate. And I'm not here to crush your dreams, but if you go into a romance industry, and they're very easy to identify, realistically, they have kind of a 90+% unemployment rate. If you go into a romance industry, I'm dying to be an F1 driver, whatever it might be, right? Unless you get really, really bright green lights that you're in the top 0.1% from an early age, get to something else. I played sports with the best athletes in the world at UCLA, and I can tell you, some of them went to Seoul for the Olympics, they got gold medals, amazing, amazing experience. By the time they were 30, they were calling me for a job and literally starting their lives at 30, literally starting at 30. So find something with a 90+% employment rate. For example, acting. The most talented creatives in the world belong to a union called SAG-AFTRA. It's not easy to get into that union. You have to do a certain number of commercials. You have to be, in a union play, in a show, and they get the big moment. They're invited to join the SAG-AFTRA union. It's a big deal. These are the most talented creatives in the world. There's 180,000 of them. And of the 180,000, 87% last year didn't qualify for health insurance because they made less than $23,000. It's really simple. When everybody wants to be in an industry, there's an overinvestment of human capital, which means the people running these companies can pay you very little money, and there's just a ton of people that will do the job if you don't want to do it. So unless you're really in the 0.1%, your return on invested capital is going to be so difficult. It's going to be so hard. And it's very easy. the sexier, the return on your invested capital when you're young, your only capital is your time. The return on your invested capital is going to be inversely correlated to how sexy the industry is. Full stop. You want to be in fashion? No problem as long as you have rich parents. That is an awful industry, an awful industry. So we're going to find our talent. And we're going to find our talent and double down on it in an industry that has a 90+% employment rate, which, by the way, is 95+% of industry. The top 50% of lawyers make a really good living. The top 50%, the top 10% the top 1% of basketball players play JV in high school and will never make a dollar. So find an industry where if you're in the top 10%, you can do this. And that's most industry. So we're going to find our talent. That's the first thing. The next part of the equation I refer to as Stoicism. That's probably a misnomer. And that is just kind of trying to recognize at an early age, no one is as impressed or no one is thinking as much about your shit as you are. Try, if you can, to be the guy or the gal who drives a Hyundai, who lives in a small, clean place, but it's really small, right? You save money. Don't be the guy that orders a bottle of Grey Goose at a club thinking that's going to impress potential mates. That's just stupid. And also realize there's an army fighting you that you need to rebel against. What's that army? The entire technology complex has some of the most brilliant, deep-pocketed people armed with godlike technology to basically take every dollar from you 24/7. Oh, wait. An upgrade from economy to economy plus is only $110, and it's an investment in yourself. Wait, economy comfort. Wait, business class. Wouldn't that be fun? How often do I go to Coachella, right? Right? Do I need 2 outfits? No, I need 3. I can't decide. Oh, and I can get buy now, pay later. I get automatic credit right now. Just 2 days ago, I'm in New York. I'm ordering from my favorite restaurant, Jack's Wife Frida, on Caviar, the delivery system. And right there they go, would you like to add flourless chocolate cake from Balthazar Boulangerie? And I'm like, I love chocolate cake. Boom. These things are tested literally millions of times an hour by technology and designed by psychologists to hit you when you're at your weakest and get you to spend more money. So the ability to develop in your 20s a savings muscle, this sounds basic. Most people, I would bet 2/3 of America doesn't develop this muscle until they start freaking out in their 30s and 40s. The ability, right, to spend less than you make. And that's the definition of rich. What is the definition of rich? The definition of rich is the following. Passive income that's greater than your burn. Right? So take a number. The market's returned 11%, but let's assume it's 8%. Say maybe I need $100,000 a year plus Social Security to be okay when I'm older. Passive income, I'm not, at some point not going to want to work, so I need $100,000 at 8%. Right? It's 12.5. I'm going to need to retire with $1.3 million and then backward integrate into how you're going to get that money. Passive income that's greater than your burn. That is what rich means. I have a close friend who runs the M&A group of one of the most successful investment banks in the world. He makes between $3 and $9 million a year, depending on the year. Between his master of the life or master of the universe lifestyle, his flex set car, his home in the Hamptons, his wife, his kids, his ex-wife, his alimony, he spends all of it and more, right? We're close. He's called me. I borrowed money from him when I was starting a business. He borrows money from me occasionally when he is short on his lifestyle and he doesn't get the $7 million bonus he thought he was getting this year. I can tell you that he has nights where he is staring at the ceiling wondering what happens if the music stops. He is poor. My father, who is turning 94 in a few months, between his Royal Navy pension, he was a frogman in the Royal Navy, and Social Security, and he owns laundry machines in trailer parks. My dad is the cheapest man in the world. Totally scarred me. Did anyone here have really painfully cheap parents? My dad used to take me and my friends to the movies. My dad wasn't very involved in my life. He'd show up kind of 1 week in a month, and he'd take us to the movies, and he'd collect money from my friends after the movie. I'm not joking. And I'd just be like, I'm so young and I don't have much of a sense, but this just feels so fucking wrong. I don't know what's going on here. It was totally like, anyway, still scarred. But my dad, between all of this, passive income, he has someone else bring him the quarters from the laundromat or the washing machines. And I imagine him laying out all the quarters in his bed and him rolling around laughing. I think that's what he does. Anyways, he has passive income of $52,000 a year, and he spends 48. He's rich. When your passive income is greater than your burn, you're rich. So people tend to focus on how much money you make as a function of your wealth. It's not. It's how much you save. That is really the key. And most people never develop that savings muscle. So in your 20s, I'm not suggesting you give up everything. Go to Coachella, have some fun, buy some stupid stuff, but try to figure out a way to save $100 or $200 or $300, at least for a little while per month, and just see if you can do it, and see if you can attach yourself to the notion of taking money out of your check. By the way, I think that's the way to go. Find investment vehicles that your company or the government will match, have it taken out of your check so you never see it, round up to the nearest dollar you're spending on acorns, it immediately goes into an index fund so you never see it, because the vast majority of us don't have the discipline to save money that's within our grasp. Keep it out of your reach. Right? Developing that savings muscle is incredibly hard and incredibly important. When I was at UCLA, if I didn't make $3,300 or make and save $3,300 every summer, I wasn't enrolling in the fall. I didn't get any help from my parents, and I needed by the time the summer came along, I'd racked up all my fraternity bills, I'd racked up a bunch of bills, and if I didn't get $3,300 in 12 weeks, I wasn't coming back to UCLA. And I was in a fraternity with 120 kids. The majority of them were rich Jewish kids from the Valley. And there were 7 of us that everybody knew didn't have money. That's what it is in America. Pretty soon, everyone figured out who were the 7 guys that didn't have money. We all knew each other. We were the guys with no money. And it wasn't purposeful, but we all lived together because we had shit to get done that summer, right? Everyone else went to their homes in Palm Springs and Aspen, and we're like, okay, we got to make money. And we got a whiteboard. And we would have a contest, we'd gamify it around how little money we would spend. And every day we'd write down, all of us, we had a list, right? I even remember the names, Scott, David, Brett, all of us. And we write down how much money. In the summer of 1985, I spent $77 a week, including rent. I lived on bananas, top ramen, and milk. And once a week, I would take a coupon from the Daily Bruin and I'd go to Sizzler. Does anyone remember Sizzler? The entire crew team, 34 guys, I was the smallest guy by far on the crew team at 6'2", 195 pounds at that point. I was the wimp on the team. And 34 of us would roll into Sizzler with our Daily Bruin coupon. We would get all you can eat for $3.99. And we'd show up at 5, and we would start eating until 9 p.m. We'd eat for the week. And you know what? When you're young, you got to lean into your strengths. When you're young, I had good friends. We had beer. We actually had an okay summer. It wasn't terrible. But when you're young, try and gamify saving money. It can kind of be fun and develop a savings muscle. And then when you get into your 30s and hopefully that focus on your talent starts to pay off a little bit, you have the savings muscle. You can start flexing it. You can start investing. Next part of the equation is time. A huge flaw in the species. We cannot calibrate time. For 99% of our tenure on this planet, we have not lived beyond 35. So it does a couple things. One, when you look in the mirror at 39, you can't literally process what you actually look like beyond that. That's literally why all of us above the age of 39 look in the mirror and go, what the fuck? I mean, it's horrifying, right? When you're 35, you look different than 25, but you can process it. You can be like, oh, I look 35. When you get to 55, you're like, there's some alien being in this mirror that is so gross and uncomfortable to look at. Because guess what? You're not supposed to be here. It's unnatural. But here's the thing, you will be. And as a result, we're unable to process how long you're going to be here. And a lot of people say to me, Scott, I get it, but I'm 35. I think it's too late for me. Or I'm 45. If you're 35 and you're not obese and you weren't born with type 1 diabetes and you're economically successful, you're likely going to live another 70 to 80 years. So you still got a ton of time. And people don't appreciate time. I tell young people, okay, put it in a low-cost index fund. Well, all right, what is that? Well, it's gotten 11% a year since 2008. 11%, come on, man, that's nothing. 11% a year means that in 21 years, that investment is up 8 times. And anyone here over the age of 45 will tell you that 21 years goes like that. And so if I could give you a magic box and say, do anything you can to put $12,500 in this box, do anything. You know, one less vacation year, whatever it might be, smaller apartment, really, you know, one less coffee a day, whatever you need to do, an extra job, really be thoughtful about the money. Fine, just try and scrape together 12.5. And if you put it in this box, I'll give you 100,000 back in an instant. How much money would you put in that box? I have that box. I promise you, the next 21 years are gonna fly by. And here's the thing, as you get older, it goes even faster. Time starts to fall off a cliff because your reference point for time, the amount of time you've been here, gets bigger and bigger. So years become seasons, seasons become months, months become weeks. So try and process just how powerful it is if you recognize the power of time and how fast it's gonna go. And I didn't. I remember being picked up in the fraternity by my buddy Lee, and he was totally different than me. And I remember him saying, I gotta find $2,000 for my IRA. And I'm like, we were right out of UCLA, and I'm like, if $2,000 makes a difference to me when I'm older, shoot me. That's how I thought when I was that age. I said those exact words. I have made so much more money than Lee, but since the age of 22, he has always maxed out all of his retirement. He's always found a way to put a little bit of money away in his IRA, Roth, or anything that his company would match. And he's now, I think, worth somewhere between $20 and $30 million. And I don't think he's ever made more than $300,000 or $400,000 in a given year. But when you start young, and he's a little bit older than me, and you are putting away $2,000, $3,000, $4,000 a year, by the time you're my age, you're going to be a multimillionaire. And everybody has an advantage. The advantage of people in their 20s and 30s, quite frankly, is time. But you have to understand this basic flaw in the species, and it's this truth. You're going to be around for 70 or 80 years. Even though your lizard brain's saying, no, you're going to die in childbirth or die in war or have a cut turn into... If you broke a bone 200 years ago, it was a sure death. You know, there was no bypass surgery, right? There weren't no statins for blood pressure, right? People just died. That's it, anything. They're gone. They slip and break a hip, that's it. Bad flu, you're gone. Anything you take antibiotics for back then, 1 in 3 chance was gonna kill you. You are gonna be here for 70 to 80 years. Lean into that and appreciate the power of time. The last part of the equation is diversification. And it's boring, but it's probably the most overlooked. And this is really where I screwed up. Well, I screwed up across all these things, right? A savings muscle. My first bonus at Morgan Stanley, I got a $35,000 bonus, which was a ton of money in 1990. And I went out, first thing I did, I went out, I bought a BMW 325, all cash, navy blue. And I hung swim goggles from the rear view mirror, even though I didn't swim, because I wanted to signal to potential mates that I was an athlete and a swimmer, right? I mean, seriously, the license plate should have read douchebag. Spent it all. I spent it all. I did not have that discipline. And I look back and I think, and I'll come back to this, if I just had a little bit more of that discipline and diversification. It is so easy to believe to get really into one thing. And sometimes you have to as a young person. You kind of have to go all in and extend yourself on a house, right? You got to put everything you have into a house. That's understandable. You start your own business. You got to go all in on it. You have no choice. I get that. What I also did, though, was when I started a company like Red Envelope and it went public, I was that guy that went to the investment banks and said, how much do I own in Red Envelope? You own $20 million in stock in Red Envelope. True story. How much can I borrow against my stock? You could probably borrow 10 million against it. Okay, what are you gonna do with the 10 million? I wanna buy more Red Envelope stock. So when 2008 came, right? And within 3 weeks, there was a longshoreman strike at the port of Long Beach, and our stuff sat on a tanker before the holidays, 7 miles off the shore. We had a software malfunction at the warehouse, and we sent out 32,000 gifts before the holidays to the wrong addresses. By the way, that's really bad for business. And an analyst at Wells Fargo decided that the credit crisis was coming, some prescient young kid who I hope rots in hell, cut our credit line, and within 11 trading days, our stock went from 11 to bankrupt. And I went from being worth 31 million to negative 3 million. And this was about the time that my oldest son had the really poor judgment to come marching out on my girlfriend. And I remember being in the waiting room at Langone, NYU Langone, not the waiting room, the delivery room. And the kid comes out, and you think, okay, there's going to be bright lights and angels singing. I've never felt that nauseous. I was in just the worst way possible. I couldn't stand. And the doctors look at you and they give you the speech. I don't know if this has happened to anyone. It's probably happened to more people than I want to say. They're used to it. They're used to dads, like, can't handle it. They're like, just so you know, if you go down, we're not focused on you, we're focused on the mother and the kid. And they're like, so if you want to pass out, fine, but just know, you're going to bleed to death if you hit your head. So just be careful. And I don't like childbirth. I'm not going to pretend that I was fine anyways. But the reason I was really, really faint was the recognition of how badly I had fucked up and how terrified I was. Because I was sitting there at the age of 40, having made tens of millions of dollars in paper wealth, and I was effectively broke. And I not only had failed myself, I had failed my son. And all of these feelings of failure, like a total lack of being a protector, right? All these things that I think you should feel as a man, it was just emasculating and humiliating. It was like such an awful moment for me. And I thought, Jesus, if I just been a little smarter, if I just taken $10, $50, $100,000 in the years when I was killing it in my 30s and put it into really boring, stupid, low-cost index funds. If I just, instead of borrowing 10 million against my stocks and doubling down, if maybe I'd sold some stock and put it in really stupid, boring things like munis or things totally unrelated to tech, I'd be bummed about the great financial recession, but I wouldn't have my head in my knees dealing with extraordinary mental stress that took me out of the moment. This wasn't, the birth of my first son was an awful moment for me. It was awful. And it just took such a toll on me. And with just a few smart steps, if I just diversified a little, I would have saved myself all of that anguish. So what I tell people, I serve on a lot of boards now. When we raise money, I go to the management, I'm like, sell some of your stock in this financing and take some off the table. I'm like, no, we're in it to win it. I'm like, let's hope I'm wrong. But just in case, we're going to take some money off the table. And it was like, good, I want to invest in my friend's tech. No, we're going to invest in some Canadian lumber company. We're going to invest in Japanese bonds. We're going to invest in something totally unrelated to this. Diversification is your Kevlar. You can take a bullet to the chest, and it hurts, but you're fine, you survive. I had a company yesterday, I had someone call me, I now don't put more than 3% of my net worth in anything. And when something does really well and it goes to 20%, so I get super lucky, and I have an investment skyrocket, I immediately try and figure out ways to sell it and start diversifying again because I want Kevlar. Yesterday, I found out that this text-based messaging app that I invested in out of Seattle, all these ballers from Microsoft, backed by tier one, name brand VCs, so fortunate to get in the deal. How much do you want to invest? 1 million, no, we can't do 1 million. So immediately when you hear you can't have something, you want more, I invested $5 million. That's a lot of money for a professor. So excited about this thing. Zero, went to zero, right? And here's the thing. It was a bad hour for me. Fuck, for an hour. That was it, I'm fine. It just doesn't mean anything to me anymore. I have Kevlar on. I have 34 other investments some are doing really well, some aren't. But I was smart enough to know once I got some economic security, I needed to diversify because I'm just not going back to that delivering room. Diversification. Because here's the thing, a lot of your success and a lot of your failure is not your fault. No one saw the great financial recession coming. There's going to be things that are out of your control. No matter how awesome you are and what a force of nature you think you are, market dynamics trump individual performance. And that's why it's really important when you have a big win to recognize a lot of that is not your fault and to pull in your horns. You are never more prone to a really stupid mistake as when right after you have a big win, because you start believing it's you. I understand how to make investments. Any company I start is going to be successful. So you get more risk aggressive. That is when you really screw up. At the same time, when something really terrible happens to you, you invest in something and it goes to zero. A relationship ends on just terrible terms. You get fired or laid off. Also recognize a lot of that is not your fault. I mean, some of it might be, but a lot of it isn't, and forgive yourself. I also think that's probably the key to success. It's the key to mine. I have been shot in the face. I mean, fucking shot in the face, professionally and personally. I've had companies that I've started go bankrupt. I've been kicked off the board of companies I started. I've had a divorce. You know, there's literally been moments in my life where I thought, I'm never going to be able to work again. This company's gone away. Everyone's lost their money. I'm at war with the venture capitalists. I'm never going to be able to work again. No one's ever going to invest in me again. I've had moments where I thought, I'm never going to find someone to share my life with again. Ever. This is it. And my competence, my superpower, is that I mourn and then I move on. And I start calling people and saying, hey, I have this idea. Should we explore this? Right? Do you want to join me? Should we start a company? Should we do this? And then I have no problem calling people, including the people who lost money, and saying, hey, I've got another idea. Do you want to invest? Right? I have no problem enduring rejection from women. That's the key to success. The last story I tell in my business school class is the following. I was at the Raleigh Hotel in 2003. And I walked in, middle of the day, and I saw someone I was very drawn to. And I said, before I leave, I am going to speak to this person. I like to make promises. Before I'm going to call this person, or I see someone I admire is at a conference, and I promised myself, I'm going to meet this person. I said, I'm going to talk to this woman before I leave. And it's the midday sun, and the music stops, and we're at the pool. She's with another woman and a guy. And I'm like, oh, fuck, and I just bomb out. I'm like, no, you promised yourself. And I go back in. To approach a strange woman in the middle of the day without the benefit of alcohol, when she's sitting with another woman, another man, not easy. It is easy, though. I just said, where are you guys from? Anyways, long story short, 2 years later, our son's middle name is Raleigh, right? Thanks. That's such an emotionally manipulative story. And what I tell young people is that nothing wonderful professionally or personally is ever going to happen to you unless you take an uncomfortable risk. You do something professionally that could just blow up in your face. It could be public failure. You could lose money. It might be your own money. It's going to be really hard. You're taking a big risk, right? You want to score outside your weight class romantically? That's what we all want. We all want to partner with someone better looking than us that's higher character than us. The only way that's going to happen is if you get out a big spoon and eat shit. Rejection, specifically your willingness to endure rejection, is the key to your success. When I see some guy or some woman with a much higher character spouse and an incredible living, and I think, oh yeah, they're probably pretty talented, but what I know is that they are willing to endure rejection. That's the key. And the correlation between wealth and IQ is actually correlated, but it tops out even sooner. It tops out at about 110 or 120. Smart people make more money than dumb people. But once you get to sort of slightly above average intelligence, it's what they call grit. And grit is the New York Times best-selling interpretation of eating shit. So diversification, right? Put a little bit of money, let it grow. It's your Kevlar, diversifying, don't be stupid like me, right? Find your talent, realize the power of time. And then the context, and I didn't know how to put this in an equation. The context, and I'll wrap up here and open it up to Q&A. There's a myth that billionaires, kind of the Senator Warren, Senator Sanders myth, that billionaires are bad people. That by virtue of being wealthy, it means you crawled all over people. I've done a lot of research on this, and it's a very unpopular thing to say, but generally speaking, wealthy people are generally very good people. Because the only way you get... By the way, the guy clapping is rich. He's like, hello, ladies. That's right. Nice and rich, the guy clapping. The way you get from economic security to real wealth is by being put in a room of opportunities when you're not physically in that room. People want you to win. The only way you get really wealthy is by aggregating a ton of allies along the way. When you fuck up, people give you the benefit of the doubt. They give you the benefit of the doubt. Something went wrong, that's okay. It went wrong, let's give her the benefit of the doubt. You meet someone who has a great opportunity, they're looking for someone, and you think, wait, isn't Lisa looking for a job? God, Lisa's such a good person. And they go up to that person and they say, I have someone who'd be outstanding for you. And then they advocate for Lisa. Google did a study on its hiring practices. And when they put out a job opening from product management, they get within 24 hours like 200 CVs. They bring in 20 people. 80% of the time, the one person who's selected, 80% of the time, was referred internally and has someone championing them. Someone who goes into the hiring manager and says, I know, Carol, trust me, she's great. Hire her, you won't regret it, she's great. Do you have people fighting for you? It's the only way to get really wealthy. Wealth is a full person project. And so from a young age, and I wasn't like this either. I was always thinking about myself. I was never a bad person. I was never a mean person. But I really wasn't working hard for other people. I wasn't investing in relationships. And just as putting a little bit of money into low-cost index funds compounds, a little bit of generosity, a little bit of like fighting for others when they're not in the room, a little bit of like talking really well behind someone's back, those little investments compound. I mean, think about, we all have this. I don't know Pablo that well, but he's been good to me. He's made small investments in me. I've made small investments in him. And something happens. It's like when you open your 401k and you're like, wow, I'm wealthier than I am. I wake up now, he and I really like each other. We have a bond. We're friends, right? Even though we were never really like close along the way, little investments along the way over 20 years, they compound. And I wish I'd figured that out 40 years ago, not 20 years ago. Wealth is in the agency of others. Now let's talk about the downside. The fastest way, and I've experienced this, the fastest way to snatch financial defeat from the jaws of financial security, divorce. I lost 60% of my net worth overnight, because I got divorced. And I'm not suggesting you stay married at any cost. I'm just talking about the world the way it is. I lost 50% of my assets, really more like 60 because I had to support 2 houses all of a sudden. And I guarantee you, when you get divorced, it'll be at exactly the wrong time to sell your home in Coral Gables. Exactly the wrong time. You become a forced seller of assets, which you never want to be. Show me a small or a medium-sized business that's doing well, and then all of a sudden it flies apart. I'm going to show you professional divorce. I'm going to show you partners that are warring with each other and break up and get divorced. So if you want to be more than economically secure, and you want to be wealthy, and you follow these things, the other thing you're going to have to be mindful of is you have to bring generosity and, most importantly, forgiveness to your personal and your professional relationships. I always kept score. If I wasn't getting enough from my business partners, I'd tell them, I'm contributing more. I'm bringing in all the business, right? And in a relationship, I'm so there for you and you're not as there for me. My friends, whatever it was, I was constantly keeping score. And it's dangerous because you will always inflate your own contribution and naturally diminish theirs. If you don't bring generosity and forgiveness to your relationships, you're not going to be super wealthy. Most very wealthy people are in great relationships personally and professionally. They give people the benefit of the doubt, and they're seen as good people that stuck with them even when they weren't adding as much value. That's okay. That's okay. Put the scorecard away. Okay, I'd like to wrap up with some sort of really moving analogy about life, but I'm sort of out of steam here, so this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to open it up to questions you can ask on any topic, and we will go from there. But again, I will end with make small investments in relationships. See above, Pablo.
All right, we're going to start with Gaston over here.
Scott, thanks for coming.
Thank you. Please introduce yourself.
My name is Gaston. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
My question is, do you still believe that your original statements around the acquisition of X by Elon Musk are correct?
What were my original statements?
I think
I said
generally
it was going to be a disaster, no?
You said you thought it was going to be a disaster and it was going to go to zero, or he was going to lose most of his advertisers. Do you still think that it is a disaster? Do you think he's turned around?
Well,
what's your view on his current performance?
Sure, the truth has a nice ring to it. This is the worst acquisition in history. He paid $44 billion for it. He just issued options at $14 billion. There's no Fortune 500 company that's lost 66% of its value in the last 24 months. He was everyone's hero. Now he's a guy spreading homophobic conspiracy theory. He's, in my opinion, a classic example of a Greek tragedy. I think he's a terrible role model for young men. 12 or 13 kids that we know about by 5 different women being mean to people. I think he's a terrible American and a terrible role model for young men. Next question.
All right, I have one over here. It's a lot less specific, but I was wondering what your definition of success was. You talked about your definition of happiness and how you correlated it to wealth, and I was wondering if there was any nuance with the definition of success.
You get on this hedonic or monetary treadmill. I've been on it my whole life. I'm still way too focused on money. I'm still insecure about money because I'm scarred by it. I'm done. Unless I really screw up, I'm done. And I'm still constantly looking for ways to make money. I think about it way too much. I'm not obsessed with it, but I focus on it too much. And the thing you gotta remember, and this is a good problem, if you get to a point of economic success, it's the means. And it's important, but it's the means. The ends is using economic security to release yourself from the anxiety that it puts on your relationships, right? Children in low-income homes have higher resting blood pressure. The majority of divorce is money. We don't talk about this because we like to assume that all women are Marge Simpson and all men are Homer, right? All women are these high character, nice people with no agency, waiting to be hopefully treated well, right? And that all men are stupid idiots that overcome their idiocy and are okay guys down deep. I generally find there's a lot of good women and some bad ones, and there's a lot of good men and some bad ones. But 70% of divorce filings are filed by women. And it's usually after one of 3 things. The guy loses his business, has a mental breakdown, or declares bankruptcy. The bottom line is women still expect men to be providers. And the data is there. So once you get to a certain level of economic success, the most wonderful thing about it is it can free you from that anxiety, and you can focus on what every study says is the key to happiness, and that is deep and meaningful relationships. And the ability to hang out with my boys, the ability to do wonderful things with my friends, the ability to give money away, the ability to like really focus on relationships and health, that's happiness. The fear, and I know some people like this, is that you're gonna end up there's a suite at Langone, there's a floor for big givers, and it's like the Four Seasons. And this is where rich people go to die. It's literally like the Four Seasons. And the fear is that you end up there with the most talented doctors in the world in the nicest room, and you're really comfortable, but you don't have a great relationship with the people who are supposed to be there comforting you, right? That's the fear, is that you're so focused on money, it's my fear, right? That I can end up at the end, and it's like, okay, I can afford anything, but who's in the room with me? Is it strangers under bright lights? So I think happiness is getting to a point where you have the economic security so you can focus on relationships. Like, try and be a really good dad. Try and be a really good partner. Try and be a good citizen. Because I think that shit makes you feel really rewarded and really good. So money is the ink in your pen. It can write different chapters. It can make certain chapters burn brighter. It's not your story. It's not your story. You got to get to something else at some point. Thanks for the question.
Scott, we're going to go left, right over here.
Hi, Scott. Kevin Ware. Thank you very much. First of all, thank you for what you said about the protests at NYU and elsewhere this past week.
Sure.
You've kind of become a cult hero, especially with
Who
my
would
friends.
know Fox would love me?
Yeah, no. Well, I also know about 500 35-year-old Jewish women who now think you're a sex icon. So, you got that going for you.
You just lost all credibility.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, but for those that didn't hear what you said, perhaps you could summarize again what you said, and maybe it might be a stretch tying it back to the algebra wealth, but the common denominator seems to be, or at least the headlines, that these protests are going on at schools that cost $60,000, $70,000, $80,000 a year.
Yeah.
And maybe just an open-ended, what are your thoughts on that common denominator and maybe where we went wrong in higher education?
So the protests, okay. So okay. I actually think, and the media, I actually think the majority of protests, because they don't get covered by media, because they're not interesting, but I've been spending a lot of time on campuses looking at, I think the majority of protests are what I'd call civil protests. They don't get news. No one cares. No one cares. People just walking around signs and saying their thing. I don't agree with what most of them are saying, but one of the proud legacies we have in the United States is free speech. And free speech means enduring people saying things that you find vile. And I think most of it is fine. And a kid who's 19, who's paying us $68,000 or $72,000 to come to NYU, who's testing the boundaries of his or her thoughts and immediately wants to be a rebel, I cut a wide berth for that kid. I think we should try and be very forgiving and tolerant of them. How many of you would have liked the footage of the camera following you around 24/7 when you were 19? I did and said some really stupid things. Now, having said that, and I've said this, I've said it pretty much everywhere. If I went down to the square at NYU in a white hood, wrapped in a Confederate flag, and I started saying politely, in a civil way, burn the gays, lynch the blacks, Dylan Roof, the person who killed 9 people at a black church, I hope that his thoughts go global. I would never work. By the end of the day, my NYU ID would be shut off. Hate speech has never been freer when it's levied towards Jews. We start using words like context and nuance when it's anti-Semitism. And if I in any way started threatening physically, and I was a catalyst for any type of activity that made a kid feel uncomfortable at NYU, I mean, really made them feel uncomfortable, screaming at them with a mask on, I mean, really vile shit, throwing things at them, all of these things that happen, all right? I think they'd call in the fucking National Guard. But this time, we seem to want to have this thoughtful conversation around First Amendment and free speech. I see a radical double standard, right? Now, having said that, I think it will die down. You know, I'm hopeful that we call on our better angels. The other thing I've gotten some shit for, I can cut students a wide berth. I am totally unforgiving of the professors here. We're being paid. The kids are paying us and they're 19. They're supposed to be idiots, right? As long as they're not violent, it's free speech, it's protest. America has a proud legacy of protest. Cut them a lot of slack. But as a professor that is being paid, if we do anything that's not taking the temperature down, if any professor, I don't care, it's not about free speech. If you show sympathy and in any way endorse an ideology that if it came to fruition in America would mean that the majority of our students, including the gay kids, including the Christian kids, would be executed, if you don't have the critical thinking skills not to condemn this, much less support it, then we as your colleagues fucked up and you should be fired immediately. And the strange thing is we've decided it has anything to do with free speech or First Amendment. If Pablo went into the lobby of the Faena and said, you know, name it, save the whales. I demand we save the whales, and started screaming at guests, save the whales. They'd be like, you have First Amendment rights. You're entitled to free speech. We cannot sue you for saying this. We cannot prosecute you, but we can fire your ass. And every professor that is not trying to take down the volume and make this a place for civil debate and where kids can enjoy graduation and kids can feel safe, we messed up as your colleagues. Universities have slowly morphed from centers of excellence to places of political orthodoxy and institutions where we feel we're in charge of social engineering. It's a total mix of arrogance and self-aggrandizement. For every one person that teaches at MIT, there's 10 people who work there doing something else. Leadership, ethics, sustainability, DEI. Great if you don't want any accountability. And I get a lot of shit from this from my colleagues, because if you say anything about these departments, you're labeled someone who doesn't get it. You don't care about the climate? You don't care about sustainability? No, I care about giving people the skills so they can have economic security, so they can elect smart people, be good citizens. That's what we're here for. Ethics departments? I can't get my 13-year-old to make his bed, but I'm going to teach a 28-year-old to be more ethic? How fucking righteous and arrogant are you? You think we're going to make these kids ethical? Let's help them get jobs. Let's help them do great research. We're a center of excellence. And it's all a function of the following thing. Academics wake up every morning and we look at ourselves in the mirror and we ask ourselves one question. How do we increase our compensation while decreasing our accountability? And all of these departments have no metrics. They have no metrics. I teach strategy. If people don't take my class, they fire me. If kids don't find that there's value and that they will make better employees and Google doesn't come in and recruit 22% of my students every year, they will fire me. How do you evaluate someone teaching ethics? So people love these departments. We hire all these FIPS, what I call formally important people, someone who ran for vice president 20 years ago or whatever. We pay them $400,000. All these departments is student debt. If you want more diversity at universities, get rid of these departments and give more trans kids, more kids of color scholarships so they can actually afford these fucking education. Do you know how expensive this shit is? And we pretend we care about diversity. It's not about who gets in. It's about how many. When I applied to UCLA, the acceptance rate was 76%. You know what it is this year? It's 9%. And so they create a misdirect and they talk about DEI. 60 years ago, we need DEI. It's like a lot of things. I consider myself a proud progressive. It's like everything we do, we take it too far. 60 years ago, there were only 12 black people at Princeton, Yale, and Harvard. That is unacceptable. So we put in place a lot of affirmative action. This year, Harvard's freshman class, and this is wonderful, is 51% non-white. Whites are now in the minority. But here's the rub. 70% of those non-white kids come from dual-income households that are high-income earners. So letting in the billionaire daughter of an Indian private equity partner, that's not diversity. I'm a huge believer in affirmative action. Some people are born with wins in their face, and I think most Republicans and all Democrats agree some people are born with wins in their face that deserve our help. That's a wonderful thing. That's what it means to be in a society. That's a wonderful thing about America. Where we get into trouble is trying to decide what are the metrics for identifying these people. And the metric should be color. And the color is green. One of the great things about America that is a sign of remarkable progress is the following. You'd rather be born gay or non-white in America today than poor. So we got to help the poor kids. And by the way, that gets to sort of mostly the same place, because still in America, we do have an economic apartheid. Black and Latino households are worth a lot less than most white households. But when you have affirmative action or DEI based on visible characteristics, it comes off the tracks. We have let in a bunch of rich white, non-white kids. All we've done is reshuffled the elites. And it's a misdirect, because when you're sitting on a $54 billion endowment and you're only letting in 1,500 kids, DEI is an issue. You know where DEI isn't an issue? State colleges, because they let in everybody. So the issue shouldn't be around who we let in, it should be around how many. And any university that isn't growing its population, its student enrollments faster than population growth, should lose its nonprofit status, because they've just become a hedge fund of classes. FSU will graduate more kids this year than the entire Ivy League. That's what we're supposed to do. Me and my colleagues have decided that we're no longer public servants, we're fucking Chanel bags. That's not what America's about. We're not here to identify a super class of rich kids and freakishly remarkable people that'll be billionaires. Were you freakishly remarkable at 17? I wasn't. UCLA was 76% admissions rate. I had to apply twice, true story. Got in, changed my life. I got a 2.27 GPA at UCLA. True story, 2.27 GPA, which isn't easy because that means you're on academic probation a lot. True. Went to investment banking, didn't know what I wanted to do. Moved at home, totally confused, totally lost. I relate to these young men who don't know what to do. And fell in love with somebody. She was going to Berkeley Business School. My best friend was going to Columbia, so I'm like, I'll apply to business school. The University of California, Berkeley, which is now a top 5 business school, let me into business school with a 2.27 GPA. I'm like, well, you must be freakishly smart. No, I got a 650 on the SAT. That's okay. Think about that. But they loved me because I was a California citizen. Like, single mother, doesn't have a lot of money. Let's give him a shot. And now this is a flex and it's bragging, but I'm desperate for your affirmation. Last year, I paid $14 million in federal income tax. It's worked out for all of us, folks. It's worked out for all of us. Nobody can identify, no organization can be the arbiter of greatness for people at the age of 17, 18, or 25. So the whole point of higher education, the whole point of America, is to make as many bets as possible, not to take the 1% to billionaire status, but to give the bottom 90 a shot at being in the top 10. That's the whole point of higher education. You know who doesn't need college? Rich kids. They've probably got an amazing education. They have all the contacts they need. It's the poor kids. It's the ones we're not letting in. It's the unremarkable kids that need college. So I really think we have totally lost the script and we've become the enforcer of this new caste system in America. And it, I'm biting the hand that feeds me. I'm trying to do something about it. But I really do think we've lost the script around higher ed. That started with Israel. This is going to be a friendly audience, so imagine me in South Florida. October the 6th, if someone had asked me what is the state of anti-Semitism in the US, I would have said it doesn't exist. I've never felt it. Never felt it. I would have said, you're paranoid. I have hardcore Jewish friends, Scott, anti-Semitism. I'm like, what are you talking about? It's nowhere. October the 7th happened, and I saw the double standard. Jesus Christ. Imagine if it had happened to us. On a per capita basis, right? Israel's 10 million, we're 350 million. Imagine if a jihadist Mexican cartel was elected president of Mexico. They ran the government, and they decided, you know what? White evangelical Christians in Texas have treated us really poorly. They're incredibly unjust to our citizens when they try to come across the border seeking a better life. They're inhumane to us. So we're going to take money and we're going to build tunnels and we're going to plan an incursion for 2 years. We're going to come into Texas, and these are real numbers based on per capita, and we're going to kill 35,000 people. We're going to slaughter them. And I won't go into the details of the slaughter. That's the population of the University of Texas at Austin. And on the way back, we're going to take the freshman class of SMU hostage and we're going to put them under tunnels in Playa del Carmen or Monterrey or Mexico. What would we do to Mexico? It'd be the Great Sonora parking lot by the time we were done with it. 2,200 servicemen are killed at Pearl Harbor. We go on to kill 3.5 million Japanese, including 100,000 in one night. 2,800 Americans killed in 9/11. We go on to kill 400,000 people in Iraq and Afghanistan. And the war being prosecuted in Gaza by the IDF is being prosecuted more humanely than any war we fought. The ratio of civilian to combatant death is lower in Gaza than it was in Mosul, than it was in Kandahar, than it was in Hamburg, Berlin, Tokyo. They are prosecuting the war, and war is inhuman. Gaza has now more child amputees than any place in the world right now. That's called war, and they invited it, and Israel accepted it. And we've got to stop using this word genocide. Genocide is when you purposely decide to eliminate people based on their race, ethnicity, or nationality. If Israel wanted to commit genocide, they could, but they don't. They have nuclear weapons and heavy artillery. They could commit genocide in about 9 days. Hamas would if they could, but they can't. So I would love just some sort of basic diction or English classes on these campuses to say these words have meaning. Homicide is killing other people. Fratricide is killing your brother. Patricide, killing your father. Genocide, killing everyone based on their religion. That is not what is going on here. It is war. It's inhuman. It's awful. But my view, and as you know, and probably a lot of people have seen this, and I get a lot of shit for it, the fastest way to end a war is to win it. And you're not committing genocide when you drop leaflets and leave voicemails and say the IDF is coming into here. So I find the double standard is crazy in America around this. Israel is the only place that is not allowed to win a war. We're allowed to win it. It's freedom when we do it. They're not allowed to win it. So this has stirred something within me. I'm an atheist. I have no emotional connection really to Judaism. But what I see here is a massive assault on democracy. And the only democratic ally in the Middle East that believes in trial juries, medical research, peer-reviewed research, civil rights, bodily autonomy, no cruel and unusual punishment, jury trials. That's a great ally to have in the United States. And it bothers me that we don't have unconditional support. The shit going on campuses on an emotional level is heartbreaking for me. It is what it is, but I like to think that people will figure it out. I think Hamas, over time, will reveal itself, and that will be good for us. I think every day that goes on, they reveal themselves. Can we have just a more uplifting question?
Yeah. I got you, Scott.
And then we'll end it.
Hi, Scott. How are you? My name is Maria Emilia. Hello. I wanted to take back to when you said about how children are more influenced by their friends rather than by their parents, and how parents can navigate, especially with boys, I have a little brother, navigate that without pushing them away.
I'm sorry, repeat that?
You mentioned that children, boys specifically, are more influenced by their friends than by their parents.
Yeah.
Correct? How can parents and sisters, in my case, navigate leading their siblings or their children?
Thank you for that.
Without pushing them away?
How old are your brothers?
My brother's 18, about to go to college.
You need to get men involved in their lives.
What if there's no men?
You've hit the nail on the head. So there's a lot of research around this. In single-parent homes, so America has the second most single-parent homes in the world, just behind Sweden. And then in And when you say single-parent homes, 92% of the time, we mean the mom. Single-parent homes, basically, homes headed by mothers. And then you have schools where 70 to 90% of the people at the school are women. There's more female fighter pilots per capita than male kindergarten teachers. There are a lot of elementary, junior high, and high schools where it's 90% female. So you don't have a lot of men there. And the single point of failure that we can reverse engineer all these men, failing young men, the single point of failure is when they lose a male role model. It's really interesting because girls in single-parent households have the same outcomes, same college attendance, same rates of self-harm, same income. While boys are physically stronger, girls are emotionally and mentally stronger. This is a scary stat. 2 15-year-olds sexually molested, one boy, one girl. The boy is 10 times more likely to kill himself later in life. Boys are really struggling. The single point of failure is when a boy loses a male, that's jet lag, is when he loses a male role model. So I'm thinking a lot about, so as a sister, you just need to realize there's certain things you can't do for your brother. Something about height, physical intimidation, depth of voice. Boys need men in their lives. And as I write this book about masculinity, I'm trying to come up with a metaphor for it, and I'm thinking about circles. And I think the core circle is a man takes care of himself. He's in good shape, he has an economic plan, he's good to himself, he's focused on his nutrition, he has a plan, he's self-sustaining. The next circle out is he's a provider and a protector for his family, then for hopefully for his extended family. Then he really starts entering manhood and he starts becoming a good citizen, thinking about his neighbors, thinking about his country. But I think the ultimate expression of masculinity is to get involved in the life of a child that isn't yours. That is the baller move. And unfortunately, the Catholic Church and Michael Jackson have fucked it up for all of us. And men are afraid to get involved or express love for a boy. I had a guy across the hallway, I was raised by a single mother, who came over, introduced himself to my mother and said, "Does your son want to learn how to go horseback ride?" She's like, "What?" He's like, "Yeah, I'm into horseback riding. Does he want to go with me?" It's like this 26-year-old guy who designed album covers. You don't have to be a baller. You just have to be a man trying to live a virtuous life. And this guy took me horseback riding every weekend for 2 years. Get involved in a young man's life. Anyways, the fact that you are thinking about it means he's blessed, and the best thing you can do for him is to try and get some men involved in his life. I appreciate your time.